in the moment, that seems to be
Mm.
a pretty big factor in the moment. So that's it makes me wonder then, our ultimate goal here is really we're trying to develop this research methodology, and we're trying to make the foundation be these really important and key parts of the worldview that we share that overlaps. So how do we capture that moment or that power that comes with anything? How do we capture that in this idea of the development of a research methodology, or do we even need to? Welcome to Podcast IRC, conversations with Indigenous scholars to advance understandings and gain new knowledge, hosted by the Indigenous Research Center at Salish Kootenai College.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about, maybe relating to the point you're talking about with intent. Like, I feel like so much of today, what we're in is just about like survival mode and learning to adapt and trying to piece together or recall those traditions that we have. But recognizing today that it's hard to always give those the time and the honor that those respect or that those should have, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And going back to the point about like the love songs, things we're talking about, I mean, there's like all these crazy things today, like Tinder or like, snagging blankets and like all these other things. Like, it's just so different. It's such a different world that we live in today. And I think it's just about like balancing and trying to be adaptive in these times.
A good point to make is, the understanding of of the song is this. It's not held singularly, and in fact it could be an object, and it could also be a time when you sing it. It could also be associated with an activity you do after or before. So really the power, when somebody says, well, what the power of the song, they say, oh, this song has no power. Maybe they're implying that, well, this person hasn't done these particular things, or this is what belongs with that. You have to do this with that song. It's just being a human. Our lives are so short. It's hard to, for me, it's hard to these imagine the time in the past and how things may or may not have changed, because all I know is just these little pieces of information that seem very static, and I sometimes forget to attach the era in which these things have happened and how that may have been that event may have caused this thing to happen in this particular way. And who's to say that can't happen again today? And sometimes I can get stuck in that thinking. And I'm a big fan of bringing things back, but I'm also a realist and think, yeah, well, What how do we do that today? And do
Mhm.
we have to put a lot of effort into that, or does it just happen naturally? That's kind of where I'm at.
It's just the tangible and the intangible and how people love each other. It's all very different idea
Yeah.
among native people. So that's why I say, yeah, it's one thing to say, can these flute songs come back? Love medicines come back. But then what would we do with them now? We would have to completely replace the romantic idea of how we view um, relationships and all that stuff today.
Right.
I,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. It couldn't just come back in some isolation. It can't. It can't be unsituated and how it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand what you guys are saying, and I agree with it completely. I wonder though, like this idea about fixing things in time, that these songs are, I mean, yes, these songs came out of a context that doesn't exist anymore. So if we bring them back, we're taking them from that world into this one and how all this stuff operates. But for anything to continue, that's what every generation always did. Because, like, my generation isn't the same as my parents or my grandparents. And I don't think that it always was. We didn't have like long periods of time that were just sort of static and unchangeable. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe the thing is, what I'm thinking about with the song and the flute is that that's personal. Like a person is attached to that. And so if that song's going to continue, it doesn't stay with that person. It can't. It's going to go away. So for it to continue, something changes.
Well, I was gonna say, it seems that though the literature, the existing literature on research, I guess as it relates to Indians, it seems as though as it comes from a place, and I brought this up a number of times, of non-participants, and I find that the perspective of participants in in what I mean is like in the culture that they're representing or whatever, and that can happen in various forms, right? But
Yeah.
it seems though that that the product is vastly different. And an example is like when John was here for the colloquium, he's not a researcher in the sense that we are, or but some of this, but he is like this how he was coming up with his conclusions, and especially in his efforts to learn different things, is like that's pretty intense research. In fact, it kind of really exposes us in like the amount of effort we put into research, because he's going on years and years and years of one thing, like working towards the answer of one thing. So, and the outcome is different. How it's interpreted is different. But, and I know Shandin, you've said this before, but the intent, his intent of the research was pretty different. So, and that seems to like never be like addressed, or if it is, it's always like in the cliff notes, or it's always kind of like something cute to say, you know. It's
Right.
not the
Right.
focal
Right.
point, I guess. There's something about effort, right? And courtship is really like effort.
Very
It's
much so.
it's
Yeah.
showing effort, and the
Mm-hmm.
amount of courtship. And to me, these old time, like even like the dance, like round bustle style, chicken dance, crow style, is all born out of the same thing of watching the sage grouse, or you know, and that's what it was doing, was mimicking the times when the sage grouse was courting. And so like it came down to like dancing, singing, um, uh, composing songs, not just singing but composing, and that's a lot of effort, but it was all born in this, like, in the same context. It's born out, it's from the same mold. And it's weird how, like, Indians today, like, we adopt, like, I mean, we're like all over the place when it comes to that stuff.
It's the stuff, like, what, first of all, what are the things that we're trying to grasp onto? And the challenge is we have very little of that. We don't have not a lot of knowledge of those things. And then so that's the struggle. And just like these love songs, like, there's maybe a handful or less of particularly these flute songs. So a person could grab onto that and learn those, but what's the point? Because the purpose is not there anymore. Especially if it's a married guy trying to learn them. Why are you trying to learn love songs, dude? You're married. You're married, friend.
And that's the thing. It's like, I almost feel like we need to make the place for these things first before we try and bring them back. Like, there's some preparation.
The place and the space and the time that's adequate and is needed to do it the right way, even.
Yeah, it's like the argument. Well, I don't know if it's an argument, but it's this debate about the Catholic hymns at funerals or wakes, and some young people or some people would say, no, we don't need that no more, because these were people treated us badly. We don't need those. Well, that's cool and all, and that's a respectful thing or an endeavor, but what are you going to replace it with? Because people are accustomed to that, especially our older people are accustomed to that way. So if we just throw it away, there's going to be a big void. And what's going to fill it? Well, who knows? And that's, I think that gives some merit to what you're talking about how do we make a platform for these things first, and then start filling in that platform with these appropriate things that we can pull in from the past that really seem to work well. Yeah.
Can I share an example?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear this?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear that? Okay, good.
Yeah, you got some birds going crazy out there.
So, yeah, I'm playing a video that I took last week when and then it stops.
Yeah.
So I'm playing a video from my phone of the sound of the red-winged blackbirds that were going crazy outside our house there.
Yeah.
So yeah, right now that song sitting in my office here in Missoula doesn't have a lot of power to it because there's no female red-winged blackbirds anywhere nearby that song is actually singing to.
But at that
time,
that's a good point.
when I saw it, it's like, man, I mean, I was just like overcome by listening to their voice. And that flock, there was actually probably like a dozen of those male birds, and they actually migrate together and they come back to their breeding grounds and they make those calls together. And then it's interesting that they just all stopped at once, like kind of all in unison. So it was just powerful in that moment. And now kind of playing it, here, it doesn't really have all that same context.
Yeah, it seems like among tribes in the Rocky Mountains, like, this idea of courtship through song is more prevalent, because it's really weird. Like, Native men in the Rocky Mountains seem to only express themselves a lot of times, like deeply emotional, like stuff, express themselves like love, war exploits, like through song. Other than that, you don't really, like, it's not real common, I think, to have, like, sit down and talk about how you feel too much, outside of, like, smoking with the pipe, or maybe like, composing songs and stuff.
It's where we're at, and everybody's there, and we can't use knowledge as a tool to shame people. I think that's really important. So being honest about it, that's admirable, more admirable than the person that would lie and say, "Oh yeah, I know a few," and not really know. So
I do think it's important to address this idea of medicine, right, and how these things are, and because of tribal people's commitment to today to Christendom, right,
yeah,
it's always seen as bad. But I think it's important that people need to understand that the way tribal people believe is that the Creator gives us these advantages in life by give, uh, giving us the tools to access certain powers in the environment, right? And that's
Yeah.
usually done through fasting or certain ceremonies, and even the purchasing of spiritual power or the
Yeah.
gifting of it from another person.
Yeah.
And anything that's seen as success in life, whether it's war exploits, hunting,
Yeah.
not being alone. Because I will say, if there's a thing that was ever made that shouldn't be alone, it's an Indian man.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's a dangerous thing.
no, there's some truth to that, and you can see it historically. You see it historically with that. That was always sought after was a wife, a partner. So
Yeah.
if there's medicine to accompany someone in war, to accompany someone in hunting, to accompany someone in ceremonial life, why wouldn't there be medicine to accompany someone in seeking a partner?
Yeah.
And why is that why is that seen as bad?
Yeah.
Because if you equate it to American society, you'll say like they'll say get established before you find a wife.
Right.
Well, in essence, that's what tribal people did when they'd say, "Don't be trying to get a wife until you get some mojo."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
I
get
do.
yourself
Yeah.
get yourself a job. Well, those are all ways advantages of finding a partner, right?
Right.
It's the same idea.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Where does that, as you say, that divinity, where does that come in today? It's here. It's here. It's in small pockets around Narez and along in other communities, but it's not in academics, and I don't know if it belongs here. This is what I'm hearing. The song is important in the context in which it's used. Yes, agreed.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, we can't. Who wants to argue? Nobody.
In situ.
In situ, yes. So if we're saying that, you know what, when anybody says, "Oh, indigenous research methodologies is founded in the worldview of indigenous people," well, by golly, songs are a huge part of an indigenous worldview. Agreed?
In fact, you could probably argue it's in the top 3. Song is from the point of creation to now, right? Song has been vital to the identity and the perpetuation of all things native. Boom.
Right. Thank you for joining us on this episode. And to learn more, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at IRCSKC. You can find us also on Facebook and YouTube by searching SKC Indigenous Research Center. You can also visit our website at irc.skc.edu. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue our discussions on Indigenous research Indigenous research methodologies, and Indigenous worldviews.